What you should be seeing right now is a ISPF screen that is looking at IOF on a job called Demo 1 Rx. If I flip the screen here, there's another data set, which is just a data set with a bunch of demo jobs in it. Christine said everything you wanted to know about running Rexx under TSO. My goal is a little bit less ambitious. My goal could be best thought of as Introduction to Chapter 18 of the user's guide. I had never done very much with Rexx until I started working for the company, and had done some. And one of the things that had really impressed me along the way was that there was there was not a really steep learning curve. Everything came in that I already knew was still valid. I did not have to learn new ways of doing old things. One other little disclaimer here is that I've got some samples here, and they're really for demo purposes only. If this were something I was going to be using in my day-to-day life, there would be more defensive programming involved, error checking, and that sort of thing. That kind of code tends to obscure what you're trying to do, so I've left that out. I had other things pressing on me until it got to where this was just on the cusp. All right, and I mentioned that one of the things I like about the way this Rexx interface is implemented is that there's a nice, easy learning curve to it. So if you look at this, there are 3 examples here which don't have Rx in the suffix. These are things that don't involve use of Rexx at all. And one of the things I'm doing here today is I'm running this mostly in batch jobs, but there will be a couple of times when I show exactly the same thing running from a TSO ISPF session. And that's one of the other things I like about this, is that there's practically no difference between running this kind of stuff in a batch job where you want to automate some process and just throw it out there and let it run whenever it's supposed to run, or doing it on an ad hoc basis from your TSO session. So the first example here is running IOF to cancel some old jobs. And originally I was canceling the jobs, and I realized pretty soon I was going to run out of jobs in doing my practice run. So in this case, the last step just does exclude instead of cancel. So this is a batch job, IKJ-EFT01. There are some other suffixes that you can get there that have to do with alternate handling of condition codes. And every now and then I go look that up again and forget it the next day. So let's see, we got IOF on this job name here. Lock, whenever you, every time you press enter when you've got a job list displayed, IOF goes back out to the system to look to see if it's changed status. A lot of times, as an interactive use, that's really what you want to do. In batch, and maybe not so much. So this says, lock the display, don't go back and look again. The next piece, extend. If you've never used extend, what happens in IOF is that there are some fields that it cannot display without accessing data that used to be on disk. I think it's now in memory. But it's additional work that IOF has to go through to display a job. And if you don't need it, you don't do it. For most of these kinds of automation things, I like to have the fields there. So it's just additional columns that require information from this just control block called the JCT. The next thing in this job is I don't want to see anything except output jobs. And I don't want to see anything except jobs that were over 21 days old. And then finally, there's this thing here. And this is a command just like you might use from TSO session from the command line, where you say 1-2, and you put a C here to cancel the job. And like I said, I realized I was going to run out of jobs if I kept canceling them. So this just excludes them from the list. So I'm going to do a submit here, and the job runs. Flip the screen, and let me get rid of that guy. He's just going to confuse things. And this is the job that ran. And this is what this thing looks like. First thing, IOF, and it lists the 11 jobs that are out there with that name. I do a lock. Let me do a lock, and it again lists the 11 jobs that are out there. I do the extend, it lists the 11 jobs that are out there. And get rid of these vertical spacings. Exclude, nothing gets excluded. It lists the 11 jobs that are out there. And now I finally get down to the 1-2X. If this was a C, it would cancel the jobs. And now you see there's only 9 jobs left, and we end that job. So that's all stuff you can do, and you, without ever involving any kind of Rexx. It's just the same commands that you use in TSO, except you just put it into a batch TSO job. So I want to do this using Rexx. And look at the invocation step down here at the bottom first. It invokes IOF the same way, invoke from job name IHPGen, but then it runs this C list, or exec rather, called del pgen. And the way this job is set up is it's the first step creates the thing or replaces it because it was already there. So this is the Rexx code. Address IOF says that anytime it gets just a character string, that Rexx will prepend address IOF. So all of these things become commands that are now issued to IOF. And you see it's the same commands: lock, extend, exclude. And this is one new one that I put in there, pause 100. This is number of 100ths of a second that you want to pause. I'm not sure why that's in there. Doesn't do anything. And then we got the same 1-2X, and you exit Rexx. Now notice that I'm only exiting Rexx. I'm not exiting IOF. When I come back into this session here, IOF would still be running, and if I wanted to issue other commands right here, I could do that. So let's run this job. Now what you see is this is the initial display of all the jobs that it's looking at. And then it runs the exec. But the difference this time is that you don't see all the intermediate pages. When it finishes, IOF redisplays the status when the exec ends. So all of that stuff that was in the middle that you probably didn't care about is gone now. Right. That becomes the simplest case that I could imagine invoking Rexx. And the main takeaway is that as a result of the address IOF, that commands that are directed to IOF are now just Rexx character strings. And if you wanted to have some sort of character string substitution in there, it's just ordinary Rexx code. In other words, you might want to pass a parameter that said how long, how far back you wanted to go. So you might want to say, instead of excluding days that are less than jobs that are less than 21 days old, you want to exclude jobs that are less than 30 days old. You could pass that in as a parameter right here, do your parse arg, pick up the parameter, and then right here, instead of less than 21, so it would be, if I'd picked up days here, then I've got days into a character string, and now I can say exclude days, and then I got that parm in there. So there are simple things that can be done simply, which I'm always really fond of. It bothers me when something that is conceptually easy is actually difficult to do. Now, all of this is in that Word document that I apologize for not getting to you soon enough. It's my fault. Cancel out of this so I don't change this. And now let's try one other thing here. I want to show you this from I want to show you this from TSO. So I do IDOT. I'm looking at IEH PGen are the jobs. There are the 11 jobs. Now I say %del PGen, and I get not found. Okay, sorry. I don't have that C list in my sysproc concatenation. Now let's do this again. So I ran that exec, and now you see there's only 9 jobs listed instead of 11, and I can continue whatever it is I wanted to do with those jobs. All right. Back to the second demo. I'm hoping that each one of these takes about 10 minutes to do. This one looks like it was closer to 15, so I might need to move a little faster. Here's an example of a job that is just going to snap a copy of, in this case, it's the log. It's one of these same jobs that I've been messing with. So do this, snap that data set into this guy here. This selects job number 1 off of the list. Now you can imagine that you're looking at the job list summary. And by the way, a lot of times the easiest way to see how this thing is going to go is to follow through. So I'm going to, that's a little cleanup from previous runs. IOF there, so I've got that list here. I'm just going to skip this snap data set. Now do a 1. Now I'm looking at the IOF job summary. I do a 1 snap, and that creates the snap of that thing there. And now I do snap close. So what you find is that following along with the way this works interactively makes it much easier to keep your mind straight on where you are in the IOF session. So let's come back to here. So I'll come out, and I'm just going to run this guy here. And flip back. There's my demo 2. And that up at the top of the screen. And you see again, it's doing all these steps with each one telling you what it saw until it finished. And when I go look at the data sets, I'll see this snap data set that just got created. Look at that with browse, and that's the log from that job. Now you could just as well, one of the nice things about doing this in batch is you might want to do this to the job that you currently have running. And in that case, the IOF command that you use, I'll just type it in here and cancel out of it in a minute, would be IOF asterisk current. IOF asterisk current means I want it on the current session. If you're in TSO, that means your TSO session. If you're in a batch job, that means your batch job. So if I wanted to pick off the log so far of the job that I've run, I could do this kind of okay, so let's do the same thing with Rexx, but I want to do something different this time. I don't want to just put the thing into some job named snap file. I want to have something that's unique to this particular job. And the easiest way to get uniqueness for the job is the job ID. Now, this introduces the concept of this TSI copy command. Loosely speaking, when you issue a command like this one that's right here, that's a command to IOF that IOF will now act on. TSI copy is coming in the other direction. If you think about it, whenever you're using any kind of full screen application like IOF, you're reading things off the screen and you're doing things in response to what you read off that screen. One way to think about TSI copy is it's read the screen. So I can just demonstrate that real quickly here. Let's select this job. I can see right here that the job name is IHPGen and the job ID is 852.118. What I want to do is to pull those values into my Rexx exec. And so there's this TSI copy, which, like I say, means get me what's on the screen. And it says get me the job name and job ID and copy it to Rexx. So I run this, and it's got a mistake in it. I think this is it. I got the wrong job. Okay, here we go. Number 4. Okay, it's saying it deleted the data sets, didn't find any of them there. And now I run this exec, and this TSI copy's got a mistake in it. And it's giving me this incomprehensible message, RC 2575. The reason I put this mistake in here is to show you the error command. The error command says, I need to find what that 2575 thing is all about. And it will put up there that I had a missing field in this TSI copy command. Now, whenever you see this little short message being displayed, you can also get the longer version of the message by pressing F1, which I just did. And this is a much better message. Missing field meant nothing to me because I didn't know what was missing. Here, it says the name wasn't found. So it didn't find job name and job ID. Well, the reason it didn't find it is I didn't tell it where it was on the screen. Now, if I come into back here, this would have been the screen I was on. If I do a help right here, one of the things that it shows is right here, format of the job summary display. Now select that. General structure of the job summary display. And it's giving me the different sections of this display. There's the job info section, the steps section, and the data set section. So when I'm telling TSI copy that I want to read something off the screen, I can't just say the name of the field. I need to tell it where on the screen. Now that's kind of a little bit strange on the job summary because it's obvious the job name only appears in one place. Nevertheless, I got to put that this is in the job info section right here. And you found that out by going to the help panel. So take those little comments out. And now I've specified that I want it from section job info. And now I run the job and I've got trace turned on here. And this is, again, one of the reasons I like to run things in batch is when you get several screen loads of trace output, it's just a little awkward to figure it out. I know it can be done. It's just, I like to do it this way. So now I've filled in this section. I get return code 0 from TSI copy, and the exec tells me what it read, and these are the job name and job ID. Now, there's that little pesky little blank right there, and I want to get rid of it. So I say, just strip off the job name. And now I'm going to build my snap dataset name to be my user ID, this demo. And for those of you who are familiar with Rexx, this syntax is real easy to get used to. Anybody that's new to Rexx immediately thinks that the job name is in quotes. It's not. This is the first quoted string. Rexx has implied concatenation. So now the job name comes in, and now the little dot to separate the levels, and the job ID and IOF list. So now I'm going to snap this data set. Excuse me, I need to get something to drink here. I work from my home office and I can spend the entire day and probably not say 5 words. Okay, so now I have my snap data set, and now I've got the job name and job ID in the list. And so this guy just ran. I'm going to go look and see what it did. And here is that data set. And there's that job log again. So now I've got the job ID in the data set name. Now, you might actually find that useful, but again, the purpose for this demo is to show the first use of TSI copy. That is the key to automating things with IOF and Rexx. Is you can mess around for a while with an IOF session and then start pulling things off of the screen. And there are lots of different ways to do it, lots of different things you can get, but they all circle back to TSI copy. Now, when you go read chapter 18 for the description of TSI copy, you'll probably come away with the feeling that maybe they could have told you more. Okay. That one was again about 15 minutes. And now it's clear that it's going to be real important that you folks get the rest of the Word doc, because I'm not going to finish this. Memo 3, let's see what it does. I don't know how many of you on this have the ability to issue operator commands, but a very common thing to do with automation type things, and Rexx and IOF is really all about automating what you could have done by hand. If all you want to do is to issue a bunch of job commands, there's an IOF console exec, or CLIS rather, that's distributed with the thing, and it can issue these commands and to show you what the output looks like. So let's go look at that. And it pauses a little bit between each command to give things a little bit of time. So this is a data set that has the output from those commands. One of the things that I have seen, what I have done very frequently, is to get something like this into a data set and then write a Rexx exec that essentially does screen scraping rather than having to go figure out all the TSI copy stuff that I would have had to do to get the same effect. But now let's look at this one. This is an exec that runs IOF. I'm going to skip past this funny little stuff here at the beginning and come to that later. And this exec gets a parm with the operator command that it's supposed to issue. Now it's going to put the output from this command into this stem variable. And now it starts with IOF. It invokes the console command. If you scroll down in the help for console about 3 screen loads, you'll find out what mform does. And now there's this thing that looks like, well, what that is a Rexx variable named command. And Rexx treats that as a command to give to IOF, which in this case is the console session. So it's just an operator command that goes to IOF. Wait 2 seconds. Now, you can imagine that you've got a screen display that has the output from this. And this loop here picks up all of that output. DRC, loop while DRC is 0. You pick up the record number, starts with record number what? Oh, so it's retrieving the record number and the current line from panel, section panel to Rexx. It saves that in the stem variable, bumps the counter by 1, and and does this down control, which bumps down 1 in the view of the output, and sets this return code to whatever it was. So as long as there's another line to look at, that's going to stay 0. And when it's no longer 0, you drop out and it just dumps the thing out. So we'll run this guy. This is the output from the Rexx command. It looks an awful lot like what we saw with the batch job, but these things are all variables in a Rexx stem. And if you wanted to, I have one exec where it's important for me to know the number of track groups that my system has. If I wanted to, I could then come into Rexx and scan for this tgnum equal to pick up the number of track groups that I have on this system. So this is a way of getting output from an operator command back into a Rexx exec, and then you go off and do something different with that. In the interest of time, what I was planning to do at this point was to just do exactly the same thing in TSO to show that it does, well, exactly the same thing. I'm going to skip that one this time in the interest of time. All of this will be in that Word document that I'm hoping Christine has found by now. Okay. I've glossed over, as you might imagine, several points.
Excuse me, Dave.
Yes.
Just wanted to let you know that I did find the document and I'm trying to forward it to everyone at this point in time. I just started about 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
So if you have not gotten the document, I just see somebody that just sent me a note. I will, again, if you're not getting the document, give me another 10 minutes and it should be in everyone's mailbox. If you don't have it soon, please send me a message in the chat box or an email. Thank you.
Okay. Before I go on, this has been pretty much machine gunned at you. I think this may be a good time to pause and ask if there are any questions about what we've done so far. And if you've got the little mute thing on, just click it, unmute yourself.
Hello, yeah, this is Fish Pierce.
Okay.
One of the things that I've tried to do in the past, and I don't know if you can have a way to do it in Rexx, but I'm wanting to dump something out of IOF, but I don't want it to go to a named data set. I want it to go to a temporary data set because I'm going to utilize it in that execution and then forget about it. But I haven't been able to figure out a way to get it to go to a temp data set. You have to, with the snap, the SD command, you have to give it a data set name. And I haven't been able to see if I can get that to direct to the DD name within the JCL. And then you see where I'm going with that?
I do. What you're looking for is a feature of IOF that has not made it into the documentation. And I pointed that out a while back when I needed to do almost exactly the same thing. And but there is a parameter on the snap command that says I want to snap to this DD. And if you give me just a second, I will, if I can remember how this.
Yep, I'm gonna go do the thing I usually do. You know.
All right. I'm working in a different
While you're doing that, I wanted to go ahead and just make a comment for sort of a general. One of the things I sort of noticed with what he was using with the Rexx and some of the in-stream data to be able to snap this to an external data set, that means you have the ability to be able to use some symbolics in the DSN name that aren't normally available to you and through just normal JCL. So JCL, you can't use a symbol that will give it, say, the current date, or at least not in the installation that I'm working at now. However, there are some symbols that if you have the parm set up correctly that are available to Rexx, to where you can go ahead and use a symbol and it'll actually put a date or a timestamp in your DD name or your DSN names.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. You see that thing I just put up there, $DD name $? Do you see that on the screen right now?
Yes, I do.
Okay. That says, I don't want to snap to this data set. I want to snap to this DD statement, which has been previously allocated. So $DD name $ is the parameter you're looking for.
Oh, thank you so much. And it actually has $ sign as delimiters for the whole parm itself. Is that because it's a new feature or something? I mean, in other words, when I give a DA and give it a data set name, I don't have to use $ signs to delimit it.
Yeah, I don't think of it as being a delimiters. I think about it as the parameter is $DD name $.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I don't know why they picked an obscure thing like that. It must be that there was some concern that there was some kind of hole you could dig yourself into, because the obvious parameter put right there is file, to be just like everything else in TSO. So the developer who did this was obviously worried about something and wanted to sort of
security by obscurity.
Exactly. And I have found the developer who did it. I've asked exactly why, and they said, well, we were worried. I said, I can't find anything that is different from what you would get from just being able to point with a TSO allocate statement. So that will handle that one. So let me, anything else about the stuff that we have shown so far? Oh, and by the way, one of the jobs that I like to emphasize to people that I have is to answer this kind of usage question. And so as you're getting into this Rexx stuff, I'm happy to answer questions. My only request is that you have read chapter 18 at least one time, so that I can assume that I'm not speaking Greek to you when I start to answer a question that does assume you've read the chapter. Okay. All right. So anything else about, like I said, this has gone out to you in kind of a shotgun blast, and it's easy to imagine that somebody is there saying, I didn't follow that. Speak up later if you need to. All right. What's this one going to be? This one is really just a modification of the first demo that I showed. And the problem with Rexx is that when you invoke a Rexx exec, if you're in a Rexx exec and you invoke IOF, IOF comes up, but Rexx is gone. The process of Rexx invoking IOF ends the Rexx exec. Now, if you do that by mistake, you will see all these IOF commands that you expected to run ending with return code -3. The -3 comes from TSO and says, I don't know what that command is. So somewhere it's worth scribbling down, -3 means IOF lost control. Sorry, Rexx lost control. And these things are now just going straight to TSO. All right, so if it's tricky to get IOF started, how do you do it? And this is the thing I said I was going to skip over in the previous example. this little command right here is one of the most obscure things I have seen. I've seen a lot of obscure things in Rexx, but I really had to go back to the book to look this one up. Whenever a Rexx exec starts, it passes in, I think it's 9 parameters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 parameters that tell the exec the environment that it's running in. And one of the things that an application can do is to set its own stuff. And the only one I've found so far that actually does this is IOF. But when IOF is running and you get into a Rexx and it invokes a Rexx exec from within IOF, this value right here will be set to the character string E and V. So it's easy to tell if IOF is running or not. So if you come into here, you parse this guy out, and if you're in IOF, if you're not in IOF, you do this mess. If you are already in IOF, you just finish up the exec. So what happens if you're not in IOF? Well, it wants to invoke IOF and stack the command that you just tried to run. So here we're going to pick up the params that came in with this command, and we're going to push a new command onto the TSO stack, which is IOF asterisk opt menu here means I want to come up with the option menu. And now I want to run % whatever that command was with those params. And this is a way that you could invoke IOF directly if you wanted to. IOF % opt menu % your name in the params. But this is just a way that you don't have to remember whether or not you're in IOF or not. You can do the same thing. Once you're running an IOF, now you can come in. In this case, I'm parsing out the number of jobs that I wanted to do. Remember that thing had a string that said 1 to 2. I was going to cancel or exclude 1 to 2 jobs. Well, this time I want to pass that in as a parameter. And it's the same thing as the first demo. I want to select just output jobs, lock extended, and now I'm going to do 1 through num jobs exclude. So here again, as in the previous example, I've got a calculation of what this, just like in the previous one where I did the snap data set name by building up a Rexx string. I've got the same thing here. And here in this demo, it says I'm going to exclude 3 jobs instead of just 2. But you notice that now, unlike when it would run in the demo 1, I don't invoke IOF first. I wonder if I've got a one little mistake there. And that's job number 9. And now I've got trace active, and you can see it's doing the same thing. It says stack the command to start IOF and exit. This is the new command, IOF asterisk opt menu % demo 4x numbers 3. Number of jobs to cancel 3. Again, I'm excluding because I was going to run out of jobs. And here's the trace of this. And now the IOF, the Rexx exec ends, and it takes me back to where IOF was originally invoked, which is the option menu. and that's the end of that job. So the point here is that if you invoke IOF from within a Rexx exec directly, you lose control. And so this is just a little trick to figure out how to invoke Rexx. Invoke IOF from a Rexx exec without losing control. You just do a little recursion. Now, one thing that you got to be careful with is that if you're in an exec like this and you want to bring up a new IOF session like this, you don't know that the IOF that's currently running is the one that you tried to start. So in a lot of our execs, what you will see is that when it decides that IOF is running, it immediately does an IOF nest command. What IOF nest does is within the current IOF session, create another one. Now this can be whatever it is you want within the exec. When you end out of that IOF nest, you're back to wherever it was that the user had when it ran. I haven't talked about this before, but a really good source of tricks for how to deal with Rexx in IOF is the distributed Iofc list dataset. You'll have a name in your system, something like iof.ioft8g2.clist. Lots of different C-lists in there are really Rexx execs, and you can learn a lot about how to use Rexx within IOF just by reading those execs. In this case, the IOF mail exec, which you may have used IOF mail to send yourself mail, has an example of using IOF nest as a way of doing things. And IOF nest is documented, unlike the $DD name dollar parameter. Okay. Demo 5.
This is Fish Pierce. I'd just like to ask a quick question because you
Sure.
just touched on the topic of those other C lists. There's only a couple of those that are in the documentation, the user guide. I found things like we've seen things like the IOF block archive or the SnapJ, but there's no documentation on what sort of parameters that they accept and what their settings can be. And I'm wondering if that's documented anywhere for all of those others.
Many of those are internal execs. They begin with the statement that says, if you modify these, don't call us. I'll turn trace on one of the execs and run with trace. And what that lets you do is to see exactly what it's doing as it's going through the thing. Some of them you can pretty well guess. And then there are others where like I mentioned IOF mail, I think the actual command to invoke that is IOF send, and you can sort of guess what it's going to have as a parameter, which is really not very much. It pretty much has to figure out everything it's going to do by prompts within the exec. So in all the cases, by the way, there's an exec that is part of what IOF does under the covers. A lot of IOF function is actually implemented in Rexx execs. If you ever use the version command, for instance, that is a Rexx exec. And so if you were to ask me what some of the params for that thing is, I would say, gee, I don't know. I will turn on trace and let you know what I find out. But copy the thing into your temporary C-list library, put trace on it, learn what you want to do, and then delete the thing, because you will invariably end up running that thing long after you thought you did and have some sort of problem. And then you call me and I said, well, it doesn't work that way for me. So demo 5 is, I guess I didn't want to say that. Demo 5 is one of the, this is just a catch-all. I mentioned that TSI copy can pull various things off the screen. And again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to run this and show you that it does what it says it does. I'm just going to rip through it. And if you have the document by now, you can take all of these things and run them yourself. There's, I think maybe my user ID shows up in that one place with the snap data set name, but except for that, you can probably run these without any kind of change. Now you need to change the name of the job that you're looking at in IHP Gen. So a couple of things, trivial changes to get them to run for yourself. This one is one of the things that you sometimes need to do in an exec is to make sure you're on the panel that you think you're on. If you invoke IOF and you come up on the option menu and you expect it to be on the job list menu, strange things will now show up. So sometimes you need to find the name of the panel that you're on. And this is a little TSI copy that says, I need to know the name of the panel. So in this case, there's a command that is actually documented. It's buried in chapter 18 called pan name. And here it says the IOF panel name is BROWZE. If I back out of this and get to the job summary, I get job sum as the panel name. One thing that I didn't mention, but you hit it almost day one of working in Rexx Execs, is the column header on a column is usually the field name. If the field name for this column is DD name, the field name for this one is step. But the field name for this column, I think, is called action. Yep. The phrase ACTION. So if you'd gotten used to the idea that you can just pick up the DD name from here by telling TSI copy that you want the DD name, that works. Step, that works. And now you want act. It'll tell you that it doesn't know that field. So the field command is where you say, all right, it's not act, what is it? And you just position the cursor on the thing, type the field command, position the cursor, and hit enter. Okay. So field name. I've already demonstrated getting the job name and job ID. In this case, I want to browse the log of a job and position to a line in the log, and then retrieve the line that contains this message. So this is very similar to what happened in that console example, which is to pull the line into Rexx, which it says current is the name of the current line, and it's coming from the panel. If you've never looked at the dbar command, you can get an awful lot of information. I'm just going to type in one of them here. dvar.1, my user ID, my IOF group name, the name of the TSO proc, logon proc that I'm running, when IOF is going to expire. All this information is available, and I can retrieve that into a Rexx Exec using this. Oh, this is obscure. Read it in the book. There are several different places that this might come from. This list says check them all. Okay. Do I have that? Oh, it's in the little Word document. There's local variables, there's profile variables, there's session variables, and there's option variables. List says, look for the thing you asked for from local variables. If you don't find it, go to your user profile. If you don't find it, go to the session. If you don't find it, go to the options data set. And so if you're looking for an option value that's a default value that's never been specified anywhere, it needs to come out of options. So list just says, go find it. Don't bother me with where you found it. The last one is how to handle errors. Rexx, as I call on error, says when you get to a non-zero return code, branch to a routine labeled error. And here I have repeated the one that I got the error on earlier, where I didn't give the section number. Remember, I got what was 2575. So as soon as this happens, it's going to come into here. I'm going to get this last return code error signal. This is what I got. Now what I want to do is to retrieve those messages. Remember when I did that error command with 2575 and I put field not found and then, or bad field and field not found in the long message. That's these guys right here. And now I can say that. So let me run this one. And I'm out of time. Errors 2575, it goes and picks up those things and it gets out the two messages, missing field, field name not found. So that is what I call my introduction to chapter 18.
And thank you again for using IOF.